Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic: shopping for produce. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting: shopping for produce. This is an engaging subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So, let's dive right in. Shopping for produce is an essential skill that goes far beyond simply picking up items from a shelf. When we use the word produce, we are referring to agricultural products, specifically fresh fruits and vegetables. Unlike the items found in the center aisles of a grocery store, such as boxes of cereal or cans of soup, produce is alive, breathing, and constantly changing. Because these items are fresh, they are often referred to as perishables, a word that describes anything that can spoil, decay, or go bad quickly if it is not handled or stored correctly. Learning how to navigate the produce section is a journey through biology, geography, and even a bit of art. If you have ever walked into a large supermarket, you might have noticed that the produce section is almost always located right at the entrance. Why do store managers do this? It is a strategic choice. They want the first thing you see to be the bright colors of bell peppers, the deep greens of kale, and the sweet scent of citrus. This creates an immediate feeling of freshness and health, which encourages shoppers to feel better about the other items they put in their carts. However, for a savvy shopper, this area requires the most focus and attention to detail. One of the most important concepts to understand when shopping is seasonality. In our modern world, we are used to seeing almost every type of fruit or vegetable available throughout the year. We can buy blueberries in January and pumpkins in July. However, just because something is available does not mean it is at its best. Seasonality refers to the specific time of year when a crop is naturally harvested. When you buy produce in its peak season, it is generally much cheaper because there is a large supply. It also tastes significantly better because it hasn't had to travel halfway across the globe to reach you. For example, a tomato purchased in the heat of summer from a local source will be juicy and sweet, while one purchased in the winter might be pale, hard, and flavorless. Let's look at some real-world examples of how to choose the best items. Consider the avocado, a fruit that is famous for being difficult to time perfectly. Many people make the mistake of pressing their thumbs into the side of the avocado to see if it is soft. This actually bruises the fruit inside. A better way is to cradle the avocado in the palm of your hand and apply a very gentle, even pressure. If it gives slightly, it is ready to eat. Another trick is to look at the tiny stem at the top. If you can flick the stem off easily and see green underneath, you have a winner. If it's brown underneath, it's likely overripe and may have brown spots inside. Another common item is the apple. When you look at the apples in a big grocery store, they often look incredibly shiny, almost like they are made of plastic. This is because many producers apply a thin layer of food-grade wax to the fruit after it is washed. This wax helps the apple retain its moisture, so it stays crisp during shipping. When you are shopping for apples, you should ignore the shine and focus on the firmness. A good apple should feel heavy and solid. If it feels slightly soft or spongy, when you press it, the inside has probably become mealy. which is a word used to describe a dry, grainy texture that is not very pleasant to eat. Leafy greens, such as spinach, lettuce, and arugula, require a different set of rules. These plants are mostly made of water, and they can lose that water very quickly through a process called wilting. When you see leaves that are limp, floppy, or turning yellow, they have lost their structural integrity and much of their nutritional value. You should always look for greens that are turgid, which is a scientific way of saying they are stiff and full of water. If you are buying greens in a plastic bag or container, a great tip is to look at the bottom. If you see any signs of slime or liquid pooling at the bottom, put it back. That moisture is a breeding ground for bacteria and a sign that the leaves are starting to break down. Root vegetables like potatoes, onions, and carrots are much more durable, but they still require a careful eye. For instance, have you ever seen a potato with a green tint on its skin? You should avoid these. This green color comes from exposure to light, which causes the potato to produce a natural toxin called solanine. While a little bit won't hurt you, it can make the potato taste bitter and can cause stomach pain if consumed in large amounts. When it comes to onions, you want them to be rock hard with skin that is dry and papery. If an onion has a sprout growing out of the top, it is still safe to eat, but it will be much less flavorful because the onion is using all its energy to grow a new plant. Berries, including strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, are perhaps the most delicate items in the entire store. Because they grow close to the ground and have very thin skins, they are prone to mold. When shopping for berries, you must be a bit of a detective. Pick up the container and look at it from all angles, especially the bottom. Because berries are often packed tightly, one moldy berry at the bottom can quickly spread its spores to all the others. If you see even a tiny bit of white fuzz on one berry, it is best to choose a different container. There is a major debate in the world of produce regarding organic versus conventional farming. This is a key part of the modern shopping experience. Organic produce is grown without the use of synthetic pesticides, which are chemicals designed to kill insects and weeds, or synthetic fertilizers. Many people choose organic because they want to avoid chemical residues or because they believe organic farming is better for the environment. However, organic items are often more expensive. It is important to know that in terms of basic vitamins and minerals, conventional and organic produce are very similar. A common middle ground strategy used by many shoppers is to buy organic for items where you eat the skin, like peaches or spinach, and buy conventional for items with a thick peel you throw away, like bananas or onions. Interestingly, there is a growing movement to embrace ugly produce. For a long time, supermarkets only sold fruits and vegetables that looked perfect. Perfectly round, perfectly red, and perfectly straight. This led to an incredible amount of food waste, as farmers would throw away up to 20% of their crops simply because they looked a bit strange. Today, many stores sell these misfits at a discount. A carrot with 2 legs or a curved cucumber tastes exactly the same as its perfect counterpart. By choosing these items, you are not only saving money, but also helping to reduce the environmental impact of food waste. Historically, the way humans shop for produce has changed dramatically. Before the 1900s, most people either grew their own food or visited small local markets every day. There were no refrigerators, so you could only buy what you were going to eat that night. The invention of the refrigerated rail car and the modern supermarket changed everything. It allowed for the global trade of produce. While this is convenient, it has also led to some downsides. For example, many fruits are now bred for shelf life and durability rather than flavor. A banana that can survive a 3-week journey on a ship is often less sweet than one picked ripe from a tree. This is why many people are returning to farmers' markets, where the produce is often picked the very morning it is sold. Another nuance to keep in mind is the concept of climacteric versus non-climacteric fruits. This sounds complicated, but it is actually very simple once you understand it. Climacteric fruits, such as bananas, tomatoes, and peaches, continue to ripen after they are picked. They release a natural gas called ethylene that signals the fruit to soften and become sweeter. This is why you can buy a green banana and wait for it to turn yellow at home. On the other hand, non-climacteric fruits, like grapes, citrus, and strawberries, do not ripen once they are removed from the plant. If you buy a sour orange, it will stay a sour orange no matter how long you leave it on your counter. Knowing this can help you plan your shopping list based on when you plan to cook. Finally, we should address the misconception that frozen produce is always inferior to fresh. In reality, frozen vegetables are often processed and flash frozen within hours of being harvested. This locks in their nutrients at their absolute peak. Fresh produce, however, might sit in a truck for several days and then sit on a store shelf for several more, losing vitamins every hour. If a certain vegetable is out of season, the frozen version might actually be more nutritious and better tasting than the fresh version that has traveled thousands of miles. As you spend more time in the produce aisles, you will develop a sixth sense for quality. You will learn to hear the hollow thump of a ripe watermelon and feel the weight of a juicy lemon. Shopping for produce is a way to stay connected to the natural world. It is a reminder of the seasons and the incredible diversity of what the earth provides. By taking your time, using your senses, and understanding a bit of the science behind the scenes, you can ensure that every meal you cook starts with the very best ingredients possible. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.